Good morning, a holy Yidden. Today is Tuesday, the 6th of Nisan, March 28th. It's a Tuesday. We're studying the entire Talmud, one page, one line at a time. Presently, Pesachim, which is an extremely appropriate subject to study in the lead up, in the days that lead to Pesach. As a matter of fact, our discussion more specifically is the discussion of Biur Chametz, which in addition to acquiring Pesach food, Biur Chametz is a central part of, no doubt, what most Jewish folks are engaged in. I know many people are very misudar and they're already long kosher for Pesach. But for the rest of Klal Yisrael, this is a time of eliminating Chametz. And interestingly enough, today's Gemara is going to talk all about how early does one need to prepare for Chametz. And it's pertinent, perhaps, for Chevra like our Chaverim like here that maybe either have or had multiple addresses, and we travel. So what do? Did Reb Berel have to check his house for chametz? Or did Reb Berel have, maybe does Reb Berel have to sell his house for chametz? A good shaila. Reb Berel, you're going to sell your apartments? Reb Berel, you there? Reb Berel? Okay, we'll stop picking on him. Does Reb Berel have to sell his house, or did he have to inspect it, or is it fine the way it is? So that's going to be today's Gemara's discussion. So take a look. But first, Eli had a question. But Eli, I don't understand your question. So it's the same question that I told you I didn't understand yesterday, or it's a different question?
Menachem knows the question. He's
the question about the milk.
He knows the question.
He wants. I think I know what he wants to know, but I don't understand it yet. He says, if you know what, I can't read. I don't even
Eli,
know how to.
Chametz is not magic. Chametz is scientific. If there's chametz particles, then it's chametz. There's no chametz particles. There's no chametz. If you know no kid put Cheerios in the milk, then it's kosher l'Pesach. If you think your kid
the milk that you buy, Eli, the milk that you buy before Pesach is considered kosher l'Pesach. It does not have a. It doesn't have to have a stamp kosher l'Pesach. That's why if you buy it before Pesach, you can drink it during Pesach.
What does opening have to do with anything?
However, if you open it up before Pesach, then it's already has more of, in my opinion, would have more of an issue because maybe some chametz got into it. So Correct. It's not a question you can open it up before Pesach and then use it on Pesach.
No, you could. You're allowed to.
Well, if you're sure that you didn't touch it, that nothing fell into it. If you put it away someplace in a kosher l'Pesach place and a refrigerator that's kosher l'Pesach.
Okay. So wait. Hear me out. Hear me out. Okay. So yes. What you're saying is agreeable. I'm not going to just bring the rabbi in this to in particular to the rabbi. But if you go to a shul, any shul, and you have your kosher Pesach milk, and someone comes in that's not so religious, not so 100%, and he comes in with a sandwich that didn't know, and he touched the milk, but you thinking it's good. So where we stand?
Hold on. If a person's coming into the store and touching their sandwich to your milk, there's a much more fundamental problem of contamination, and all right.
There is questions, there's doubts about everything.
No, anyways, okay.
Where is you got my point.
No, I don't actually. I think you're not getting. Anyways, okay.
I got the point. I'm just trying to be more machmir about the question. Why should it be okay if you open the milk before Pesach? You're allowed to use it during.
Why should what be okay? Where did the chametz go? Where did the chametz go?
On the milk, maybe. You don't know.
You went on the milk. You went in the milk.
You don't know. Someone came into the shul while you went to the back, and they touched the milk. But you think the milk is still good.
No.
Say right now, you open your milk. You open your milk, right?
No, first of all, I'll tell you this. Many people, myself included, would not keep open food from a chametz refrigerator to Pesach because the assumption is that people are not mindful. For example, there's cream cheese in the shul refrigerator. Cream cheese is, in principle, kosher for Pesach. But I have a good friend here, and he's rubbing cream cheese on a bagel. And after he rubbed the knife on the bagel, he put it back into the cream cheese. So that cream cheese is utterly chametz. And I'm watching it with my own eyes. So that's just a fact. So if the food is open and it's being touched, then you shouldn't use it. But you're asking, like, you're coming with a premise like everybody knows that milk And that's not really so. Of course, if it's open, if it's used. And Alon, I want to thank you for being the demonstration for my for our discussion right now. All righty.
All right, all good. All good, all good. I got it.
But your behavior is a very good demonstration. You're not doing anything wrong, by the way, because chametz not on Pesach is kosher, but on Pesach it's a problem. And also, we shouldn't put that back in the chametz refrigerator, in the Pesach refrigerator.
Eli, your question really, if you think about it, anybody during Pesach can,
Is there
from
enough
the
left for
outside
lunch?
can come in with a piece of chametz and contaminate anything.
I'm sorry, hold on.
Doesn't have
I was being distracted. Go ahead. Go back. Doctor?
No, I just said to Eli that according to his scenario, anybody can come in from the outside even during Pesach and contaminate anything. It doesn't have to be milk or cream cheese or anything. You know, somebody comes in with chametz from the outside. There's no end
Correct.
to it.
Correct. 100%.
Rabbi?
100%. I agree with that.
So that's why in Israel that now they passed the law that in the hospitals, it's recommended not to bring in during Pesach any chametz into the hospital.
Recommended. Rabbi?
Yes.
Quick question. I don't know if you want to go into it, because when you mentioned to Bernie about selling chametz, have you come into issues where the ownership is not what you
Hold on.
or one person or even the person, let's say you're in a condo, okay, let's say it's in somebody else's name and they don't even know it, or they do know it, but they're not thinking, and they go make a shtar and they sell the chametz, but the actual owner of the apartment had no awareness or no intent.
So you're saying if you're a tenant,
not a tenant team, I'm going beyond the tenant. We come into these issues with elections that you have to own an apartment to run for. Okay, it's the same issue. Do you have to own the apartment, not a renter? Okay, some apartments are owned by a couple, some are owned by one person, some are owned by a trust, some are owned by a corporation. These are all different.
or partners.
Or partners, right? So
But
you're saying
I don't think
Chaim Yankel-
you're not selling the apartment. You're selling the chametz that's within the apartment.
I understand, but
Correct.
I understand. I'm questioning, is that an issue?
I don't believe so, no.
Okay.
If you have the jurisdiction to be in there and have your chametz in there, you have the jurisdiction to sell it, particularly as we were describing yesterday, as yichad lo makom, that he has a space that's designated as his. Now let's go to a new question, which is going to be equally thought-provoking. And whenever Rebbe is able to talk, I want to ask him a question. No pressure. Amarav Yehuda Amarav. So again, this is the next. Here's really my point. We have a lot of questions that are very, very nogea halacha l'maaseh, and there are many answers or clues or insights or perspectives that are going to be given to us in the coming 3 or 4 pages before Pesach, because that's exactly the midst of the topic the Gemara is discussing, which is, by the way, why all these topics are coming up to us. Amarav Yehuda Amarav Hamefarish Vayotze b'Sheyara. A person is leaving town, going on a cruise, traveling from Florida to Montreal, maybe an airliner, but you know, Koydem Shleishim Yoim. If you leave the Lamer 30 days before, says Rav, Ein Zakuk Levar, one needn't purge and eliminate the chametz. But if you're leaving the Lamer to Montreal, less than 30 days to Pesach, Zakuk Levar, there is a need to eliminate the chametz. Let's read Rashi.
I think you also have to do b'dika.
Hold on, one thing at a time. One thing at a time. Forget what we know and let's let the Gemara teach us. We have to go back to be a blank slate because we're going to see different opinions. So, first things first, you got to get rid of the chametz. Rashi, what's this whole deal of the sheyara? Meaning l'makam rachak. If you're in Montreal, you can't just run back home. I mean, maybe today you can, but you basically you're stuck. So koydem shleishim yoim lePesach. Well, the Kamon Mefarish later on, the Gemara is going to explain being that we begin to engage in Pesach business. And so this is the time where one needs to be very mindful of Pesach business. I know. There's a lot of questions, but this is just the first mention. So let's sit with our discomfort. That's what Rav teaches. 30 days or more, or before 30 days, don't do bedika. Don't do bir chametz. It's out of your mind. No worries. Within 30 days, now you better do bedika. Amar Abaya clarifies, when did we say that within 30 days you do need to do a bedika? That's only in a scenario where you intend to return. You're going to come back home on Pesach, so you should prepare yourself before you leave to be kosher Pesach. So, for example, if someone were to go from La Mer to Montreal 30 days or less before Pesach, but they've planned to visit on Chol HaMoed, so then, which was a question that was answered in the negative, but it was a question. So then you need to do an inspection. But if one does not intend to come home, as if to say, the only reason why one is doing a bedika is because they may actually be home and encounter chametz. That's what Abaya says. But if you're going to leave within 30 days, but you won't be around, then you still don't have to. So according to Abaya, as it stands now, Reb Berel shouldn't have to do bedikas chametz, even though he left within 30 days, but because he's not going to be home over Pesach, he need not do so.
I have a question. To ask?
Give me 1 second.
Okay.
Sorry, folks. Go ahead. Question.
Okay, so right now.
Actually, no, hold on. Ellie, is it pertinent to our discussion?
Yeah. So what's
Okay,
the whole purpose of you signing a paper and selling your address or selling your house? Like I have a Jersey house, I have a Florida house, I have a California house, and you sell it, right?
You do?
So
you
now
never
you want to
invited us
go.
to your California house?
California.
No, I
Never
never been
invited
there.
us to.
No, I don't have. I'm just giving you an example.
Oh,
So now I want to go
can't take it
from
back.
here. I want to go from here to California, and I know that all the permits that's in the house, I don't want to touch, but I can't live there. I can't go there for the Chol and bring my own chametz and put it on the table and make it fresh, all kosher Passover. Do I have to search again? Not search, but I already sold it before Passover.
Where are you?
Let's see. That's exactly what the Gemara is talking about. So you're asking good questions, but it's premature to ask because that's exactly what the Gemara is going to probe. So let's recap what we know so far. In Eli, you're asking a good question. That's the Gemara's question essentially. Rav says you leave town, you're going to be on for a while. In times past, if you went on a caravan from Israel to Iraq or to India, we're talking about a year or 2 or 3, and if you're lucky, you'll come back. So you're really going to be long gone. So what do you need to think about? What do you need to think about before you leave? Do you need to think about bedikas chametz? So Rav makes a very, very general blanket statement. It depends when you leave. Before Purim, no bedika, right? Purim is a month before Pesach. After Purim, you got to do bedikas chametz. That's essentially what Rav says. Abaya says it's not so simple. We need to entertain some more information. What's happening in those 30 days that makes you chayiv? Probably because you might be back. And probably the same thing would apply if your kids or grandkids are going to be crashing the apartment over Chol HaMoed. They're going to be in the Fontainebleau for the first days, and they want to come spend, right? So no one does the Fontainebleau anymore. I heard it's the how do you call it? It's the what's the place in Aventura? Anyways, so that's what Abaya says, only because you're going to be back. Do you think everybody is going to accept Abaya's explanation? What do you think? Come on, help me out, folks. Everyone's going to accept Abaya's explanation, or is there going to be some more dialogue here? All right, if you've been doing Gemara long enough, you know that most likely we're not going to just accept. All right, let's see the Gemara further. Rava pushes back and says, hold your horses. Hold on a second. What's going on? If you're going to be home on Pesach, even if you left the Rosh Hashanah time, you're not allowed to have chametz in your house on Pesach. Who cares when you left? You need to get rid of the chametz before you go. Rashi, whenever you'll arrive back home, over alel, you will be over on the prohibition of having chametz around. And when you arrive at home, you cannot do a bittul. You're not allowed to have anah. Rashi explains very beautifully, very poetically, that if you arrive on Pesach and there's chametz in the house, it's your problem. It's a problem. So Rava clarifies and says, no. The Amris Kaidim Shloshim means Zakuk Levair. On the contrary, the whole idea of 30 days is a chumrah. Until before 30 days, you don't need to inspect. You're going to be going home. If you intend to go home, then before you leave, it's up to you. If you plan on leaving town and you know your next return ticket, you bought a round trip ticket, La Mer to Montreal on Matzah Rosh Hashanah, Montreal to La Mer, Chol Hamoed Pesach. You bought that round trip ticket. So then, then you have to do B'dika because you're planning on returning on Pesach.
Okay.
Now you understand.
So I have a question. So I rented in Chol Hamoed in the
Stop. No, hold the thought. I don't know what your question is, but let's see if the Gemara might not give us some more information. Write it down, hold the thought, and then when we cover a little more ground, please ask it again, okay? Why does Rava believe? Is there precedent? Is Rava being consistent to say that you need to inspect if you plan on using it? Well, let's read. Rava is consistent. Rava taught us another halacha about Pesach. Your home is going to be turned into a storage unit, a storehouse. What did people used to store? Oitzar usually meant grain. If you're going to suddenly fill your house up with stacks and piles and bushels of grain, and when you bring it inside, there very well might be a tuna bagel or Cheerios on the floor. Hey, zakok levayer. You do not need to inspect the chametz. But if it's within 30 days, zakok levayer, before you bring anything in the house, you have to get rid of the chametz. Let's read Rashi, and then we'll see if we can understand what Raz's theory, his reason is here, and how it applies to travel. Sheichnis from Tavua, he brought grain inside v'tachta chametz, and underneath the grain is the tuna fish sandwich, right? That's obviously what Rashi means when he writes chametz. Okay, kidding. If there's tuna, you probably don't want to put grain on top of it. Come on. The Gemara is going to say soon, chametz, later on in the Masechta, chametz, shenafal of mapelas, hariyakim avor. If a house, if a structure collapses, and there's chametz under the structure, you do not need to dig up the collapsed structure to purge the chametz. It's considered purged because it's inaccessible. So therefore, if you were going to cover it up, it's effectively gone. You don't need to get rid of it more than 30 days. But within 30 days, you need to actually eliminate it. Why? Because the ideal method of eliminating chametz, which is your obligation, your responsibility within 30 days of Pesach, is to actually burn it, not just to leave it under an irretrievable stack of grain. Let's read this Rashi carefully because this is Rava's principle, and this is going to help us understand why Rava doesn't make you check for chametz if you're not going to encounter it on Pesach more than 30 days. So this is an important Rashi. Lechala, chayvas bir, alav. The trigger, you have not triggered the responsibility of eliminating chametz. Basically, and please listen carefully I'm listening carefully. I'm trying to think about this carefully. It sounds like Rashi is saying there's two issues. You're not allowed to own chametz, but there's more to that. You have to actually purge chametz within 30 days. And the only way to ideally purge chametz is actually to find it and burn it. To just what's the word? To decommission chametz by making it inaccessible. If you're not going to do it in the ideal way, you have not done your mitzvah of bir chametz. You don't have chametz, but you need to do bir chametz. And so it sounds like Rava is saying, and Rashi is saying, that from 30 days and less, you have a chiyuv of bir. But if you leave before 30 days, when you left, you do not have a responsibility to eliminate. The chimati, when you enter into the period of time for purging chametz, loy mechuyav, you do not need to get rid of it. The nafla of mapilas, because the chametz has already been rendered inaccessible and therefore non-existent. So there's this very interesting thing that we seem to be saying here, which is that there's two issues. There's the prohibition of owning chametz, and there's the responsibility of eliminating the chametz. Within 30 days, you got to search for the chametz and eliminate it. More than 30 days, you do not need to eliminate it. The fact that it's way above it, it's way beyond your access, it's way beyond your reach, and you cannot search, that's sufficient. Let's
Rabbi,
listen to the Gemara carefully. Yes.
I had a question for you. We sold the chametz in Hollandale.
Okay.
And our house in the city is of course locked. But Karen's brother keeps going in and out. Is it our I'm trying to think of the word.
Have you discharged your responsibility of Karen's brother live in your house? Does Karen's brother live in your house?
He lives in an
Does
apartment
Karen live in your house, or he has his own unit?
He has his own unit, but it's attached to our house, so he can open the door. Yeah.
So I'll tell you, his unit is his responsibility, but there is another question. Hold on, listen. Okay,
he doesn't obey the Passover. So
okay, but listen, your job is not to. You don't become.
In other words, do I have to protect my house from allowing other people to come in where it's full of chametz?
I'll tell you the truth. This is really an important and delicate question that doesn't get a black and white answer. It gets a very nuanced answer because everyone has a variation of this question. But the short answer is his space is his responsibility, and you cannot and should not compel him to do that which is his business. And you should ask him very respectfully to please don't bring chametz into the house. And then that should be enough. And then you let him continue to do his thing. And I wouldn't have an inquisition against him. I would maybe ask him to be careful especially careful to maybe avoid a kosher for Pesach kitchen area. Then there's another question, which is more delicate, but also should be considered, which is after Pesach, if he has not sold the chametz, can you share a l'chaim with him with chametz drink? Or can he share with you a pretzel that wasn't sold for the chametz? And that's a delicate question, but most likely if he didn't sell the chametz,
he doesn't believe in Passover.
Let's not talk about him. Let's just talk about the idea. But he doesn't believe in Passover, so he has chametz, and therefore you probably should not share a pretzel that was owned over Pesach. Except maybe, and I'm just thinking aloud, and you need to consult your rabbi or even myself privately off the line to really discuss this properly. Maybe you could say, "Hey, brother-in-law, I love you, and I know you love us, and I know you don't believe in Passover, but maybe you could do me a favor." Just to make it easy and not awkward, would you mind signing this form, selling your chametz? That way I'll be able to consume your chametz after Pesach. And what you do inside is not my business, but this will be very helpful. And then you'll consult with the rabbi offline and make sure that if he sold the chametz, even if he ate a pretzel or two, you'd be allowed to eat it. But most likely that would be an important step forward. But in general, I should warn and say that it's delicate. Family is delicate and family is important. and we need to be mindful that not everyone's going to be in the same, state and same level of devotion, and we have to be as respectful of relationships, as well as passionate about our belief in our traditions. And it usually takes a little bit of a walking between the raindrops to respect the dignity of the people that we love and preserve those relationships. And certainly we don't need to be like, burned down with a flamethrower, burning and destroying and avenging, because that's usually not helpful in any sense. But anyway, a good question. But let's see but just for clarity's sake, it's not immediately connected to our issue here, which is the responsibility to eliminate the chametz, because the presumption and the starting point of our Gemara is that the person that's reading the Gemara and trying to figure out the halachic responsibility, it takes chametz elimination seriously. And so now our question is, if you leave town, what is your baseline responsibility? Today, possibly because of relative accessibility and due to the fact that you might change your plans, and hypothetically, it's only a matter of a few $100 to jump onto a plane and go from Montreal to the La Mer. And I'm just picking on our good friend. So today, the advisable thing would be, if you're not going to be there, to sell the chametz, and if you are going to be there, to sell the chametz. Anyways, let's jump back into the Gemara. Because the Gemara asks a good question. Rava says that when you leave your house to leave out of town, within 30 days, I don't care where you're going to be, you got to search for the chametz. Before 30 days, only if you're going to be home, you need to check the chametz. Otherwise, you do not have a responsibility to search for the chametz. This doesn't say that you should not be mevatel the chametz. It doesn't say you shouldn't sell the chametz. It doesn't say that maybe the chametz, by virtue of its inaccessibility and the fact that tuna fish sandwich is going to be moldy and rotten beyond your imagination, and therefore it's not going to be chametz haru'oya lachilas kel. It doesn't say any of those things. All it's talking about here is the positive, proactive responsibility of chametz inspection. More than 30 days, you do not need to inspect. One second. I have a question. Rashi, no, hold. Don't. If you interrupt my train of thought. Okay. No auction.
Oh, I can ask? Okay, so what happens if you sell your house and everything's fine? You're living in your house with a housekeeper.
Ellie, she brings the amount of time. The amount of time the amount of time we're going to argue. If you should ask the question, you might as well ask the question.
Okay, I'm asking. So, if you have a housekeeper and she brings in chametz into your house, and we tell her, if it's possible, could you take the chametz to the basement in this corner and sit over here and eat it, and don't bring it to the rest of the house? Is that okay to ask her, even though you sold your house? Is that corner okay for her?
Yes. What does yesterday's Gemara tell us?
You got my question.
Remember yesterday's? So you're testing me to see if we remember the yesterday's Gemara. You understand how yesterday's Gemara answers that question?
I didn't probably hear the question yesterday. I'm sorry.
Let's go. I want to show you. I'm glad you asked the question. It's good. We can't just move forward. We have to sometimes hold in our minds previous Gemara. Look at this. A Gentile walks into your house holding chametz. No problem. If he gives it to you to hold on to and be responsible for, you gotta get rid of it. If you give the Gentiles that space, this is their space where they're going to engage in their chametz, and they're going to keep their chametz, and they're going to be responsible for it. You don't need to get rid of it. Huh?
That was yesterday.
Gotcha.
Yesterday's Gemara answered your question. It's a good question. It's such a good question. The Gemara chose to answer it. And I'm glad you asked it. It was a good refresher.
Thank you.
And you know what? Sometimes I don't remember the Gemara from yesterday, so it's good to. It's good.
You actually gave a good, meaningful personal example, Rabbi. So we know that you know the issue, and we know the issue. So it was, people who own houses in California and Florida and Brooklyn have, difficulty.
It's a lot. And Ellie, it's not easy to keep in mind all the cleaning people. In all the properties,
the maids, butlers, and gardeners.
But Elliot, but actually, I want to back up a second. Just based on the Gemara, you should probably tell them, please only go here. Don't bring chametz into the kitchen. You should give them as much instruction, just to keep it out of the kitchen, etc. But based on what we looked at just now, in theory, if they're just bringing their tuna fish sandwich from home, tuna bagel. Actually, Eli, on Pesach, I don't know if you can get a tuna bagel, because is there anyone that's not a Jewish restaurant that sells tuna bagels? No, I'm kidding. all the non-kosher. Anyways, Max's Deli, whatever. But the point is, in theory, if it's chemtza biyada, if it's in her hand and she's not storing it, she's eating it. If she drops a crumb, it's her crumb. It's her problem. But yet we don't want to have chametz floating around the house because we don't. But that was a good practical application for yesterday's Gemara. Good question. Eli, I'm not going to stop giving you grief for the questions, but you shouldn't stop asking them.
I'm not going to.
It says, the Pirkei Avot says, Eina Baishan Lomed, or whatever the language is. A person that's bashful will never learn, because you have to be willing to put up with the. And then it also says that a teacher, I don't see myself as a teacher. That's why I'm able to do what I do. I see myself more as a member of the Chabura. But a teacher should not be a kapdan, should not bite the head off of the questioner. But it's a work in progress. All right. So let's go back to our discussion. Again, you're leaving town more than 30 days. No need to inspect. Abaya says even within 30 days, there's no need to inspect unless you're going to be around. Rava says no. Once 30 days pass, you've hit the bell. You've triggered a responsibility of Bidika. I'm sorry, Bior. You need to purge chametz by fire, most likely. And therefore, you need a first search, and then you can bring in whatever your stuff is. And the Gemara says there's a companion teaching along similar lines, that if you're going to decommission your home, turn it into a storage house, and on the bottom of your floor, you have some Cheerios and a tuna bagel. Within 30 days, you should inspect because you've already triggered the responsibility of Bidika. The Gemara asked the question, hold a second. Or I'm sorry, rather, the Gemara continues in the name of Rava. And this is Rava being consistent with our Gemara. Even if it's more than 30 days to Pesach, the only reason that we say you don't need to do inspection is if you don't intend to move all that grain in the house on Pesach. Your grandkids are coming for Pesach, and so you say, listen, until then, we're going to keep the grain in the house. We got to clear the area for the kids, and we'll put a bunch of sleeping bags on the floor. So if you intend to clear out the area, you need to think, if you plan to be there on Pesach, as long as the last time that you'll have access to that space, you need to make it kosher for Pesach. So that is our Gemara. So Adkan, the Gemara has clarified the responsibility to do a Bidika, to do a Bior, within 30 days, according to Rava, even more than 30 days if you're going to be there during Pesach. The next step of the Gemara is not going to move from this, but it's going to be questioning why 30 days triggers the responsibility of Bior Chametz. So before we do that, I want to take a fast peek into the Shulchan Aruch. This is the work of Rabbi Yosef Karo, 436. What is that? Tuf, Lamed, Vav, Amud, Halach Alv. Mefarish miyavash l'yam. A person's traveling far away. And he doesn't leave somebody else who can do the bedika, and it's within 30 days of Pesach, meaning after Purim. Zakok lived like the person needs to search for chametz, but lo yivarech chazal b'yer chametz. Don't make the bracha. Kaidem shleishim yaim. If you leave, hold on. Kaidem shleishim yaim, less than 30 days. Ein sarch lived like there's no responsibility to do bedika. What are you going to do? You're owning chametz and you're not allowed to own chametz. So the Ramah points out what the Torah teaches us. And it's what I said. When you get there, Pesach, yivat leno, you should make it null and void, ke'afra da'ara, in your mind and in your heart and verbally. Although you have not purged and destroyed the chametz in the prescribed form, that's enough, because when you left, you had no responsibility to do the bidika, to do the beer. And now that it's time for the beer, you have no access, so you're fine. If you intend to return before Pesach, tzarich livdek, then you should leave. Why? Maybe although you intend to come back on Erev Pesach, have you ever flown on an airplane before? Has it ever been delayed by 10 minutes and then by an hour and then by 3 and then by 6? Unfortunately, I have. And therefore, if you think you're going to arrive on time to do Bidika, you better just be careful and do it before. But and he will not have time to do Bidika. Similarly, if you make your house into a storage house, And the same halacha we just saw. Then there also says, hold on, you should consider that wheat can actually become chametz, so that might be another problem. Anyways, the Eishaimer, the Shulchan Aruch continues and says, there's another opinion that says, excuse me, Shleishim Yom ein tzarich live like Hainu kshein daite lachzor b'teicha Pesach. Pisha daite lachzor koydem Pesach hayachrav ein tzarich live like even koydem Shleishim Yom. Avom daite lachzor b'teicha Pesach, if you plan to return on Pesach, tzarich live like afilu min Rosh Hashanah im shachach libadak yivatzal k'shiyeh b'gia Pesach v'leivar chabitl gam mishlein tivei. Anyways, long story short, the halacha seems to pretty much be embracing Rava's teaching. Let's now probe the source of the halacha. Eli, what's your question?
So say right now the flight delayed, everything's delayed, and I want to go to Florida. Can I send you to go check my house and do the bracha and everything?
We'll see. One could have a shliach.
Can I send someone else? Yeah, okay.
Have a shliach, sure. Actually, we even learned that there were some societies that dafka had someone else search. Remember that? Now let's probe what's 30 days. Doctor?
Quick question, because I walked away for 1 minute when Ellie asked this question earlier. If you have an apartment, not your apartment, okay, common issue, somebody else's apartment, you have the key to the friend's apartment. 2 months ago, they left, they didn't do Badika, and now it's Pesach, and let's say your grandchildren have 3 friends who were staying, could they use that apartment just to sleep over one night obviously with the permission of those people, but there's been no Badika. They're not going to eat. They're not going to do anything other than go in with their sleeping bags or whatever and sleep.
It sounds like perhaps they could, but I don't want to give up psak here, but it sounds like perhaps they could.
Okay, good.
The Gemara now asked the question.
Rabbi?
Yes.
What is the nature of grain? I'm asking this question because I thought that chametz is a leaven or a leavened product, but grain itself is not leavened yet. It's just a possibility for grain to be leavened.
Yes.
Is it to be chametz from the purposes of Passover?
So the primary discussion of chametz is flour introduced to water, which becomes leaven. There is a discussion in halacha, and I kind of skipped over it, but we spotted it for a second. There was a discussion about how you might handle kernels of wheat that have the potential of becoming exposed to water and cracking and having some kind of leavening process. So without getting into it at length, there is a possibility that it could be an issue, but the primary chametz that we're talking about is flour and water, or another kind of scenario like that. Did I answer the question?
Yeah, you didn't
hedge, but
you didn't tell me what to do with grain, but I guess I can sell it.
Oh, you're asking a practical question. If one owns grain,
yeah,
probably one should sell that grain with the chametz. If you have a bag of barley or wheat pearls, whatever they call it, probably ideally that should be sold with the chametz. Hani shloishim yom, 30 days. Where is that from? My aveda time. When did that? From where? And when did that develop? Kiditanya, there's a brisa that teaches Shoyalim v'darshim ilchas haPesach. We discuss and expound and query about the laws of Pesach. Koydem haPesach, before Pesach, shloishim yom, for 30 days. There's a 30-day window where one should be in a Pesach mindset, thinking, considering, exploring Pesach. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel says, no, Shtei Shavasa is only for 2 weeks. My time of the Tanakama, why does the Tanakama say 30 days? Simple. Shari Moshe amid the Pesach Rishon. If you look into the Bible, you will find that on Pesach, Moshe stood and preached Umazir al Pesach Sheni, and instructed the Jewish people about the second Pesach, which was 30 days later. As we know, there's Pesach Rishon, which is the 15th of Nisan, and then there is Pesach Sheni, which is the 14th of Iyar, essentially a month later. And it says, "Vayasu b'nei Yisrael Pesach b'moyadai." The Torah describes that the Jewish people did the prescribed Pesach. And on that day, some people were not able to engage in it. And it was at that time that they were told that they should do it a month later. And so on Pesach, they did the Pesach. It says, and so we see that there was right away a discussion on Pesach Rishon about what's going to happen a month later. Rashi, so we see that one should always consider the next holiday for 30 days. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel says no. I read the Pischa. It's not like you always have to be preparing 30 days. Here it happens to be they were looking at matzahs and Korban Pesach, and it was very much on their mind. So therefore, Moshe gave them the instructions. Good morning. Here, I'm going to finish the class in another 15 minutes. No, but here, I'm going to give you the form now. So you should fill it out with your name, your address, and if you have another address up north or an office, put it all in. Okay? And then when I finish, we'll take care of it. All right. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel says, usually we do not deal with holiday 30 days in advance. Here, they were already talking about everything about Pesach, so it was appropriate to discuss all Pesach matters, including the Pesachim. So let's understand why Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel says it's a 2-week preparation period. My time of the Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, Shari Moshe Aymed B'Rosh HaChodesh. Moshe instructed the Jewish people on Rosh Chodesh Umazar ala Pesach Shenemar, and this is something that we've a passage of the Chumash that we've discussed in a good bit, which is HaChodesh Hazel Lachem Rosh Chodashim. The conversation starts. It's Rosh Chodesh. Uksiv Dabru El Kol Adas Yisrael Lemar VeEsra LaChodesh Hazeh. And it was on that very time that Hashem tells Moshe to talk about Pesach. V'yichul Lachem Ish Tel Beis Aves. So from Rosh Chodesh to the 15th of the month, that's 2 weeks. So the Gemara says, hold on a second. What's your evidence that Moshe's shmooze, Moshe's instructions happened on Rosh Chodesh? Maybe he waited till the 4th or 5th day of the month. And it's actually likely, because how could you collect your thoughts and assemble everyone in the same day? So there's actually another source that tells us that you should spend 2 weeks. That's going to be the opinion of Rabbi Shimon Gamliel. There's another pasuk. So in Bahaloischa, I think the Torah talks about the second year in the desert. Basically, there's Pesach 1 in the desert. There was Pesach 2, and there's Pesach 0, 1. There was 2, and then there was 3. I think this is the third. No, I'm sorry. This is the second Pesach in history, the 1 year after the Exodus. So let's understand what's going on over here. Hashem tells Moshe, B'chodesh Rishon, on Rosh Chodesh. So what do we see? That in the beginning of the month, they started talking about Pesach. That's going to be 2 weeks later. So the Gemara says, what makes you assume that this whole conversation happened on Rosh Chodesh? Maybe it happened on the 4th or 5th day. So the Gemara says, no, you're not going to pull that one this time. When the Torah uses the word midbar, we have a Gzeira Shava. You know what that Gzeira Shava is? Actually, no. We have different instances where we use the word b'midbar. The very beginning of Chumash b'midbar starts off by saying that Hashem spoke to Moshe on Rosh Chodesh. And then we have in Parshas Bahaloischa a conversation that says, just like the first time it said Bamidbar was Rosh Chodesh, here too it's Rosh Chodesh. So the fact that Moshe tells the Jewish people all about Pesach and Rosh Chodesh teaches us that one should prepare and discuss and probe the halachis from Rosh Chodesh which again is the opinion of Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, in contrast to the Tanna Kama who says you got to give it a month. So the Gemara asks a very good question. This is a question that's quoted in Rashi, and it's an essential question to understand Chumash Bamidbar. Folks, you're with me? We're talking about the instruction to do Pesach. We're talking about
the carbon Pesach, right?
We're talking about the carbon Pesach. Carbon Pesach happens on the 14th of Nisan. Let's go now to the beginning of the book of Bamidbar. You know how Bamidbar works? Book of Numbers. It goes Bamidbar, Nosoi, Ba'aloischa. There's the first 3 Torah portions. Ironically, Bamidbar, the beginning of the book starts Vaydaber Shal Moshe Bamidbar Sinai Ba'ol Ma'id Be'echad Lachodesh Hasheni B'Shana Hashinis. Talking about on the first day of the second month, which is Iyar. Right?
Pesach Sheni, right?
But there's no talk of Pesach Sheni, there's a talk about a count. And then you go to Ba'aloischa, just chapter 9. Bamidbar is chapter 1, Ba'aloischa is chapter 9, the third parsha. Vaydaber Shal Moshe Bamidbar Sinai B'Shana Hashinis B'Chodesh Harishon. So do you notice what's happening? The book starts talking about Iyar, and then the third parsha in is talking about Rosh Chodesh Nisan. Chronologically, very challenging. So let's see. Gemara asked a very good question. Gemara asked a very good question. Surely the Torah would want to first start talking about Nisan and then Iyar. It would be like talking about March and then January, Lahavdil, right? Usually, if you're going to tell a story in a chronological order, you'll start with January, then February, then March. So the Gemara asks a little bit of a tangent. As Rashi says, Lo yashmatin parch. This question isn't about our present discussion about 2 weeks or a month. I say the parsha is kaparch. Now that we've discussed the book of Bamidbar, we want to understand why the Torah portions are out of order. Mechti, Parshas Pesach Nemra Tchila, in chronological order, first Passover happened. Shaharei b'chodesh Nisan Harishon Nemra, because it happens in Nisan. Tichsim b'chodesh Harishon. Uparshas Pikudim, the instruction of the census. Nemra b'Iyar happened on Rosh Chodesh Iyar. My taima actim alahai b'Rosh Sefer Parsha Du b'Parsha V'Leisla. Why is the book of Numbers out of order? This is a macro question, Dr. Hammer.
The adage "Ein mukdam u'meuchar b'Torah" is very relevant here. Correct?
Yeah, this actually might be the source.
Okay, just
this Gemara is going to be for sure an essential Gemara. I think it's the first time, at least in the Gemara, that we've encountered this.
Okay.
So how do we deal with this big, resounding question, a challenge about the lack of chronological order? Amarav Menashia, our Tachlifa Mishmei the Rav, we have a teaching. The name of Rav, Zoy Saimeris, this is a solid indication that Ein Muktam U'Mu'uchar B'Torah. Chronological. Dr. Hammer, you're a big Talmud Chacham? A Baki B'Shas?
Yeah. Where it came from.
Listen, this is a group of, listen. You were upset when I was talking about.
I've been brainwashed after 3 years. Wow.
You were upset when I described the members of this Chabura as scholars, but take a look. So Rav Menashe says, you're right. It's a good question. It's such a good question that our conclusion is going to be Ein Mukdam U'Mu'uchar B'Torah. The Torah has a precise reason for the chronology of the verses and the parshas, but it's not a chronology of time. It's a structure of priority or other calculations, but not time. It's not a chronology of time. Which I guess chronology means time. So meaning the order of the parshas are there the way they are for a reason, but it does not give us any insight to time. Rashi, let's understand what it means, Ein Muktam U'Mu'uchar B'Torah, which was wisely introduced to us by our doctor. Lo Hikbida Torah al Seder Muktam U'Mu'uchar. The Torah was not interested, was not concerned about being aligned based on the chronology of time. Uparshiyos the Nemru Tchila Hikdima Hamuchar Isla. And so you can have a Torah portion that was said earlier and later. And that is quite all right. And there's a lot to be discussed on the subject. The commentaries in the Chumash talk a lot about the reason why the Chumash might scramble the order.
Rabbi, when they
All right,
were wandering in the deserts,
yeah.
what did they do on Passover?
So the Jews in the desert, the Jews in the desert, their time was chronological. But the way it's aligned in the Chumash, that is not necessarily organized by time. It very well might be organized with other priorities in mind. Alan, say something.
Listening.
Someone said, okay. Basically, my screen just blanked out on me again. And yeah, it's time to buy a new wire, but I haven't had a chance to do that since yesterday. And so I'm thinking this might be the time to conclude our discussion, just because I don't have much of a better alternative.
Now it comes to the Midbar, after the first and second year, they didn't do carbon Pesach, so they got there to throw. And I don't think they weren't doing bris.
So this is Pesach Sheni. This is the second year of doing Pesach.
And they didn't do it for all the remaining. And I also think they weren't doing bris milah, so therefore that was probably the reason for not doing it.
Yes. You're referencing one of the reasons brought, I think, in Rashi on the Chumash. We're going to stop right in the middle of a question about chronology. My dear friend, Shalom Bar Chumash or no Chumash today? But you have to use your computer, I think, because. All right, dear friends, a big yasher koyach to everyone for joining. You know what? There's Dr. Pasternak. I'm sorry, but there's not going to be Chumash because of our malfunctioning here. And let me see if I can even figure out how to. Actually, I know what I'm going to do.
Well, if you need a new monitor,
I'm sorry.
It's
not the monitor. It's just a wire, which I need to. I probably have another one. I just need to figure it out.
Cable.
Let me see if I can.
The Torah is not in chronological order because we read about.
Where do you know it's from?
And even we read about the Mishkan, which happened after.
But where do you know about these things? Because the Gemara asked the question. So this Gemara is the source for a lot of what we know about a Mokta Mokha Batar. All right, folks, I'm sorry I got to run, and I figured out how to end this. So there's not going to be Chumash, and I hope to see everybody tomorrow. Mitzvah Hashem, Gesundheit and Freilich